Level 1. Nuclear hype. Zero delivery. Freddie Adu signed with DC United at 14 years old. Nike gave him a $1 million endorsement deal before he'd played a professional minute. Pelé, actual Pelé, appeared in commercials explicitly comparing Adu to himself. Sports Illustrated put him on their cover. ESPN broadcast his youth games. America had found its soccer messiah, and he hadn't finished high school. The hype wasn't manufactured from nothing. Adu genuinely looked special. The touch, the vision, the composure on the ball that seemed impossible for someone his age. Scouts from Manchester United, Inter Milan, and Juventus flew across the Atlantic to watch a child play. This was supposed to be the moment American soccer finally produced a global superstar. By 25, he was playing in the Serbian second division. By 30, he was trialling with lower league Scandinavian clubs, hoping someone, anyone, would give him one more chance. By 31, he was playing for Österlen FF in the Swedish 4th division. He retired in 2021 after a career spanning over a dozen clubs across multiple continents. Benfica, Monaco, Belenenses, Philadelphia Union, Bahia, Jagodina, Cups, none of them sticking. Each transfer a smaller stage. Each contract a shorter duration. The trajectory pointing only downward. This is what Level 1 looks like. The gap between expectation and reality isn't just wide, it's cruel. What happened to Freddie Adu? The psychological toll of carrying that weight, of being told you're destined for greatness before you understand what greatness costs, is rarely discussed. Adu didn't fail because he lacked talent. He failed because the narrative surrounding him made normal development impossible. I said yes to everything that was asked of me, Adu later reflected. A lot of appearances, a lot of promotion, a lot of interviews. It took away from the football on the field. People saw me more as a marketing tool. Every quiet performance became evidence that the prophecy was false. There was no room to be a teenager learning his craft. He was either the next Pelé or a fraud. Nothing in between. Ravel Morrison carried similar burdens at Manchester United. Sir Alex Ferguson called him the most talented youth player he'd ever seen at the club. A statement that speaks volume from a manager who handled superstars. Rio Ferdinand said he was better than Paul Pogba at the same age. The hype wasn't exaggerated. Morrison genuinely possessed technical gifts that made coaches believe they were witnessing something special. Zero delivery might be unfair. There were a few months at West Ham, the 2013-14 season specifically, when Morrison looked like the player everyone believed he could become. 3 Premier League goals and 2 assists in 24 appearances. That stunning solo effort against Tottenham at White Hart Lane that earned Goal of the Season nominations. For a brief window, the prophecy seemed real. Then it vanished. QPR, Cardiff, Lazio, Atlas in Mexico, Adu Den Haag in the Netherlands. The journey reads like a cautionary tale about what happens when raw ability meets insufficient support systems, internal and external. Level 1 isn't mockery, it's tragedy. These were children handed expectations that would crush most adults, then blamed when they couldn't carry the weight. Level 2. The professional floor. The names at this level all achieved professional careers. They played in top leagues. They earned contracts that would represent life-changing wealth for most people. But measured against the projections placed on them, projections of Ballon d'Or contention, of becoming focal points for elite clubs, they represent unfulfilled investment. Adnan Januzaj announced himself to the world with a 2-goal performance against Sunderland in 2013. He was 18. Manchester United supporters saw shades of Cristiano Ronaldo in his direct running, his willingness to take on defenders, his confidence under pressure. David Moyes started building tactical systems around his potential. Then the trajectory flattened. Loan spells at Borussia Dortmund and Sunderland produced inconsistent returns. A permanent move to Real Sociedad offered 5 seasons of stability, over 170 appearances, but not stardom. Spells at Sevilla and Las Palmas followed, each move a step further from the player United believed they'd developed. Januzaj became a useful La Liga player rather than the transformative talent United believed they'd developed. Hatem Ben Arfa broke into Lyon's first team at 17, alongside Karim Benzema. And for stretches, he was better than the man who would light up the Bernabeu for a decade. His agent later described him as perhaps the biggest waste in football of the 21st century. Michel Platini compared him to Diego Maradona. Thierry Henry called his talent special. At Lyon, Ben Arfa won Young Player of the Year. His 2011-12 season at Newcastle produced that iconic goal against Bolton, receiving the ball in his own half, spinning past 4 defenders, and finishing with the kind of audacity that justified every comparison. Then the conflict started. Disciplinary issues at Lyon, dressing room tensions at Marseille, reports of unrest at Newcastle. His 2015-16 Nice season, 17 goals, the most successful take-ons in League One, proved the talent remained. But PSG signed him and barely played him. He made 0 competitive appearances in his final season there. Ben Arfa is what happens when genius meets insufficient discipline. Adel Taarabt could do things with a football that made defenders look foolish. His championship performances for Queen's Park Rangers were genuinely exceptional, the kind of individual dominance that suggested he'd thrive at the highest level. He never sustained it. Milan, Benfica. Each stop produced moments of magic surrounded by long stretches of frustration. David Bentley earned a £15 million move to Tottenham after starring for Blackburn. He was supposed to be England's next great winger. Instead, he retired at 30, his enthusiasm for the professional game apparently exhausted. Level 2 teaches something important about talent evaluation. Technical ability, application, and tactical intelligence don't always correlate. Level 3. The what-if tragedies. Level 3 is where the conversation shifts from projection errors to genuine loss. These players proved it. They reached elite levels. They demonstrated in sustained stretches of performance exactly why scouts had identified them as special. Then, circumstances intervened. Jack Wilshere's 2010-2011 season remains one of the most impressive teenage campaigns in Premier League history. The way he dictated play against Barcelona in the Champions League, against Xavi and Iniesta in their absolute prime, suggested Arsenal had found their midfield general for the next decade. He was 19, the youngest player on the pitch, and he made Pep Guardiola's legendary midfield look ordinary. His attributes were unmistakable: the ability to drive with the ball through pressure, the technical quality to receive in tight spaces and turn, the passing range to unlock defenses. Arsène Wenger described him as having Spanish technique but an English heart. Then the injuries started. Ankle, knee, ankle again. An ankle injury in 2011 was supposed to sideline him for a few months. It ended up costing him an entire season. Wilshere spent more time in rehabilitation rooms than on the training pitch. Each return brought optimism. Each subsequent setback eroded confidence. He retired in July 2022, aged 30, the body unable to sustain the demands his talent deserved. Michael Owen won the Ballon d'Or at 22, the youngest winner in over 15 years. His acceleration, his finishing instinct, his movement inside the box, these made him one of the most feared strikers in world football. The goal against Argentina in 1998 announced a superstar. The hat-trick against Germany in Munich in 2001 confirmed it. That same year, he helped Liverpool win the UEFA Cup, FA Cup, and League Cup treble. Then the hamstrings betrayed him. Owen's speed, the defining characteristic of his game, diminished with each muscle tear. He could still finish. He could still read the game. But the explosive acceleration that had made him unstoppable was never the same after his serious knee injury at the 2006 World Cup. His subsequent career at Real Madrid, Newcastle, Manchester United and Stoke represented survival rather than dominance. Phil Jones arrived at Manchester United as a 19-year-old in 2011, with Sir Alex Ferguson comparing him to Duncan Edwards, the highest possible praise in that club's history. Ferguson's proclamation was staggering. The way he is looking, he could be our best ever player. He may be one of the best players we have ever had, no matter where we play him. At 21 years of age, he is going to be a phenomenal player. Think about what Ferguson was saying. Better than Charlton, better than Best, better than Cantona, Keane, Schmeichel, Ronaldo. The ceiling seemed limitless. Then Ferguson retired, and Jones's body began breaking down. Chronic knee injuries, back problems, ankle issues. Between 2011 and 2023, he missed years of football through injury. Over 200 games lost to the treatment table. He managed just 169 Premier League appearances across 12 seasons. His body simply couldn't sustain the demands of elite football. The career Ferguson envisioned never materialized. Not because the talent was misread, but because biology intervened. Yet when Jones reflected on his career after leaving United in 2023, there was no bitterness. He won the Premier League, he won the FA Cup, he won the Europa League. Not many players can say that. The internet made him a meme, but the trophy cabinet tells a different story. Level 4. Survival Specialists. Here's the cruel arithmetic of football development. For every wonder kid who flames out, there's another who does everything right and still falls short of the prophecy. These players maintained presence at elite clubs for extended periods. They accumulated appearances, sometimes trophies, occasionally impressive statistics. But they never became the central figures their early promise suggested. They survived without dominating. And that gap between survival and dominance is where careers go to be quietly forgotten. Theo Walcott went to a World Cup at 17 without having played a Premier League game. Sven-Göran Eriksson selected him based purely on potential, the pace, the directness, the finishing ability that Arsenal had identified as exceptional. The comparisons to Thierry Henry seemed reasonable at the time. Walcott stayed at Arsenal for 12 years. He scored over 100 goals across all competitions, one of a select group in Arsenal's history to reach that milestone. His 2012-13 season was genuinely exceptional. 21 goals in 44 appearances, including a hat-trick against Newcastle. He topped Arsenal's scoring charts that season. That Newcastle performance, scoring a hat-trick and providing 2 assists in a 7-3 victory, showed what he was capable of. But that season remained the outlier. The next Henry narrative never materialized. Positional uncertainty. Was he a winger or a striker? Plagued his development. Flashes of brilliance against top opposition alternated with anonymous performances. He was consistently good without ever becoming consistently great. And that's the tragedy of level 4. Not failure, something worse. Adequacy. Mario Balotelli possessed physical and technical gifts that genuinely warranted elite expectations. His performances for Inter Milan and Manchester City included moments of genuine world-class quality. The talent was undeniable. Scouts weren't wrong about his ceiling. But Balotelli's career became defined by context rather than production. The controversies, the disciplinary issues, the conflicts with managers. He moved from City to Milan to Liverpool to Nice, each transfer representing another reset, another chance to finally become the player everyone believed he could be. He never lacked ability, he lacked the supporting structures, internal and external, that elite careers require. Danny Welbeck followed a similar trajectory. Manchester United academy product, England international before 21. The attributes: pace, movement, work rate suggested a long career at the elite level. He achieved it, technically. Arsenal, Watford, Brighton, trophies at United and Arsenal, but always as a supporting player, never as the focal point his teenage performances suggested he'd become. Until now. At 35, Welbeck has found something remarkable at Brighton. 7 Premier League goals by late autumn, the most of any English player in the top flight. In October 2025, his free kick against Manchester United confirmed his status as Brighton's all-time top scorer in the top division, overtaking Michael Robinson's tally from the early 1980s. His manager, Fabian Hürzeler, says he's maturing like a fine wine. Thomas Tuchel has admitted Welbeck was close to an England recall after 7 years away from the national team. A genuine contender for the 2026 World Cup squad. Sometimes survival leads somewhere unexpected. Level 5. Fulfilled professionals. Now we reach the level where projection met reality, where early promise translated into sustained, measurable success. But here's what separates Level 5 from Level 7. These players delivered on the contract, not the dream. They won trophies. They played key roles for elite clubs. They accumulated hundreds of appearances at the highest level. By any objective standard, their careers represent success stories. Jorginho Wijnaldum became Feyenoord's youngest ever player when he made his debut at 16 in 2007. At PSV, he won the Eredivisie and was named Dutch Footballer of the Year in 2015. Liverpool paid £23 million for him and got one of the most reliable midfielders in Premier League history. The 2019 Champions League semi-final against Barcelona, when he came off the bench to score twice and complete one of football's greatest comebacks, represented his highest single moment. He was there. He delivered when it mattered most. He helped Liverpool win the Champions League that season, then the Premier League the next. The club's first league title in 30 years, 237 appearances, nearly ever present. Yet Wijnaldum was never Liverpool's star. He was their metronome, reliable, intelligent, always available. Wijnaldum fulfilled his role without transcending it, and then came the strange decline. PSG offered him double Barcelona's wages in 2021. He struggled for game time, was named flop of the season by French media and barely featured. A loan to Roma in 2022 produced a broken tibia in training and only 14 appearances. Now 34, he plays for Al Ettifaq in Saudi Arabia, a long way from Anfield's peak. This is the paradox of Level 5. Champions League winner, Premier League champion, yet somehow still an afterthought. Cesc Fabregas deserves careful consideration. He captained Arsenal at 21. His vision, his passing range, his ability to control matches from central midfield marked him as genuinely elite. He made his Arsenal debut at 16 years and 177 days, becoming the club's youngest ever first-team player in October 2003. By 17, with Vieira injured, he was starting Premier League games. At 19, he started the Champions League final against Barcelona, the club he'd left as a teenager. The Barcelona return complicated his legacy. He expected to inherit the midfield from Xavi and Iniesta. Instead, he became a rotation option, shuffled between positions, never quite fitting the system he'd been designed to inherit. When critics called him a bench player, Fabregas fired back with his numbers. Over 150 appearances, 42 goals, and multiple trophies, including a league title. The numbers were excellent, but he was contributing to greatness, not defining it. Chelsea brought titles, but in a different role. The career was undeniably successful. World Cup winner, European champion, multiple Premier League titles. Yet the sustained dominance his teenage years promised never fully materialized. Always elite, never quite transcendent. Ryan Giggs. The teenage hype was genuine and domestically enormous. The goal against Arsenal in the 1999 FA Cup semi-final remains one of the most iconic moments in English football history. Giggs won 13 Premier League titles, more than any other player in history. He played 963 games for Manchester United, a club record, 168 goals over 23 seasons. Longevity alone places him among the most successful British footballers ever. But here's the distinction that matters. His peak dominance was relatively brief compared to his total career span. He became legendary for persistence and reinvention, transforming from explosive winger to intelligent midfielder as his physical gifts declined. The achievement is extraordinary. The question of whether he ever truly dominated European football at its highest level, in the way his early promise suggested, remains debatable. That's the weight Level 5 players carry. Trophies that should silence every critic. Careers that should inspire gratitude. And yet, the nagging sense that the ceiling was slightly higher than the reach. Level 6. Icons who could have been even more. Level 6 is reserved for genuine greatness. Players whose careers produced moments, seasons, and achievements that define eras. Players whose names appear in greatest ever conversations. And yet, even here, even among the genuinely elite, there's a ceiling left unexplored. Ronaldo Nazario was the most talented footballer many have ever seen. At 18, he was scoring 30 league goals for PSV Eindhoven. At 19, every major club in Europe wanted him. Barcelona paid a world record fee in 1996. He was 20 years old. What followed was perhaps the most devastating single season any player has ever produced. 47 goals in 49 games. The youngest FIFA World Player of the Year in history. The Pichichi Trophy. A Copa del Rey, a UEFA Cup Winners' Cup. That goal against Compostela, picking up the ball in his own half, accelerating past defenders with impossible elegance, left Bobby Robson clasping his head in disbelief. Spanish newspapers declared, "Pelé returns." He was the best player on the planet at 20. The nickname El Fenomeno wasn't marketing, it was description. Then the knee injuries began. The first serious rupture in 1999, the second in 2000. The comebacks were extraordinary. He won the 2002 World Cup Golden Boot after everyone assumed his career was finished. But the player who returned was never quite the same. The explosiveness was diminished. The body that had seemed invincible revealed its fragility. Ronaldo's career was still legendary. 2 World Cups, 2 Ballon d'Or awards. Iconic moments that live forever. The question of what might have been lingers decades later. Ronaldinho operated in similar territory. He won the Under-17 World Championship in 1997. At 20, he moved to PSG. His 2002 World Cup goal against England, that free kick that seemed to defy physics, curling over a helpless David Seaman, announced him to the world. Barcelona signed him in 2003 for around €30 million. Thousands of fans showed up just for his presentation. Within 2 years, he had revived a club that hadn't won La Liga since 1999. His peak at Barcelona, 2004 to 2006, represented football as pure joy. The skills, the smile, the audacity. He won back-to-back FIFA World Player of the Year awards. He won the Ballon d'Or. He won the Champions League. The standing ovation at the Bernabeu, Real Madrid's own fans applauding an opposing player after his 2-goal masterclass in November 2005, remains one of football's rarest honours. Then he stopped caring, or stopped applying himself with the same intensity, or simply lost whatever internal drive had pushed him to excellence. By 28, Ronaldinho was already in decline. The nightlife, the weight gain, the diminishing performances. A player who could have dominated for another half-decade instead became a travelling exhibition of past glories. Wayne Rooney broke through at 16 with performances that demanded immediate England selection. His Euro 2004 tournament announced a generational talent, the best player on pitches that included Zidane and Thierry Henry. Manchester United paid £27 million for a teenager, record-breaking money at the time, and he justified every penny. Rooney became United's all-time leading scorer with 253 goals, breaking Bobby Charlton's record with a stunning free kick against Stoke City in January 2017. He won 5 Premier League titles and a Champions League. His career achievements are extraordinary by any measure, but the final years told a different story. Under Louis van Gaal, Rooney was often deployed in midfield rather than attack. Under Jose Mourinho, he became a rotation option, the club captain whose influence and importance gradually reduced. He scored just 16 goals across his final 2 seasons. By the time he returned to Everton in summer 2017, the explosive teenager who had terrorized defenders at Euro 2004 was a recognizably different athlete. Adriano might be the most heartbreaking name at level 6. Brazil debut at 18, already considered the long-term successor to Ronaldo. His announcement to Inter Milan fans came with a free kick so ferocious it flew past Iker Casillas before anyone could react. From 2004 to 2006, he was devastating. His peak season produced goals at a remarkable rate, the left foot like a cannon, the physical power overwhelming. Copa America top scorer in 2004, Confederations Cup top scorer in 2005. Then, his father died from a heart attack in August 2004. Adriano never recovered. The weight gain, the alcohol, the missed training sessions. Jose Mourinho, who managed him at Inter, later said, "The one I felt could do it longer, and he didn't do it, was Adriano. He could shoot from every angle. Nobody could tackle him. He was a pure animal." But Adriano's career became defined by what depression took from him, not what his talent produced. He returned to Brazil, won titles with Flamengo and Corinthians, but the player who should have dominated world football for a decade was no longer there. Neymar was the first YouTube wonderkid. Before he'd played a professional minute in Europe, compilation videos of his Santos performances had accumulated hundreds of millions of views. Barcelona paid a reported €57 million officially in 2013, though total costs were significantly higher, because they believed they were signing the heir to Messi's throne. At Barcelona, he delivered 105 goals in 186 appearances, a treble in his second season. That front three with Messi and Suarez was genuinely terrifying. Arguably the greatest attacking unit club football has ever seen. When PSG paid a world record €222 million in 2017, it felt like the coronation of the next undisputed best player on the planet. It never happened. Metatarsal fractures, ankle problems, an ACL tear with Brazil in 2023. Between 2019 and 2024, Neymar missed over 100 matches through injury. But it wasn't just the body. The diving accusations, the birthday parties during critical fixtures. PSG won League One titles, but the Champions League remained elusive. At 33, he's back at Santos, where it all began, battling yet another knee injury throughout 2025. But when Santos sat in the relegation zone with matches remaining, Neymar refused surgery, played through the pain, and scored 5 goals, including a hat-trick against Juventude to drag them to safety. He underwent meniscus surgery days later. The talent remains evident in glimpses. But the player who was supposed to dominate the post-Messi-Ronaldo era became a cautionary tale about generational ability meeting insufficient focus, and a body that couldn't sustain the punishment. Level 7. Destiny Fulfilled. Only 2 names belong here. That scarcity is the point. Level 7 represents the complete absence of what if. These are careers where the projection models that valued teenage performances ended up feeling conservative. Lionel Messi was identified as special before he reached Barcelona's first team. The club literally relocated his family from Argentina and funded his growth hormone treatment because they recognized generational talent. The expectations were unprecedented. He exceeded them. 8 Ballon d'Or awards, 4 Champions League titles, a World Cup, finally, in what may have been his last opportunity. The records are so extensive, they've lost meaning through repetition. Most goals in a calendar year, most goals for a single club, most assists in La Liga history. The statistics describe dominance so sustained that comparison becomes meaningless. There's no what if attached to Messi's career. No significant injury that interrupted his prime. No period of decline followed by recovery. No controversy that overshadowed his performances. He was hyped as the best player of his generation, possibly of all time, and he delivered that exact outcome for 2 decades. Cristiano Ronaldo arrived at Manchester United from a pre-season friendly against Sporting Lisbon in 2003. Manchester United's senior players, Rio Ferdinand, Roy Keane, Ryan Giggs, boarded the team bus and urged Ferguson to sign the teenager who had just tormented them for 90 minutes. What arrived was a skinny winger with stepovers and attitude. Talented, clearly, but the teenage version was more frustrating than finished. He would dribble into dead ends, fall theatrically, infuriate teammates and opponents alike. Then he transformed himself. Through obsessive dedication to physical conditioning, through relentless work on his weaknesses, through a psychological drive that refused to accept anything less than absolute excellence. Ronaldo became one of the 2 greatest players in football history, not primarily through natural gifts, but through manufactured supremacy. 5 Champions League titles, 5 Ballon d'Or awards, the all-time international goal-scoring record, dominance at Manchester United, Real Madrid, Juventus, and the Portuguese national team. But unlike Messi's frictionless genius, Ronaldo's greatness required constant reinvention. In 2014, he was diagnosed with patellar tendinosis, a chronic, degenerative knee condition with no guaranteed cure. Real Madrid's medical staff wanted him to rest. Instead, he played through it to win the Champions League final, then competed at the World Cup weeks later, despite knowing the injury would worsen. When his blistering pace began to fade, he evolved, from tricky winger to penalty box predator, trading stepovers for positioning, dribbles for movement. That wasn't just talent. That was obsession refusing to accept decline. For every Messi and Ronaldo, there are thousands of wonder kids who fell short. Some tragically, some through circumstances beyond their control, some simply because the projections were wrong. The spectrum isn't a judgment. It's a map of how unpredictable brilliance really is. Every wonder kid carries impossible weight. Most handle it better than we give them credit for. If a name came to mind while watching, a wonder kid whose career still sparks debate, drop it in the comments. Subscribe for more deep dives into football's most compelling stories.